My mother called on a Thursday morning, and by the time she hung up, I knew my son had made the worst mistake of his life. I'm Jack Ford. I fix things for a living. Not literally, though I've turned enough wrenches and patched enough drywall in my time. I mean, I'm the guy people call when something breaks that a hammer can't touch. Bad decisions, worse consequences. I've been doing it so long it stopped feeling like a skill and started feeling like a curse. And standing in my kitchen in Bend, Oregon, coffee going cold on the counter, I had that familiar electric hum in my chest, the one that meant something was already broken and nobody had told me yet. Welcome back to my channel. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, the people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. It was Thursday, just past 9 a.m. My mother, Rose Ford, 81 years old, still on a landline on Elm Street down in Eugene, called me out of nowhere. No hello. No comment about the weather or the game last night. Just my name, dropped flat and careful, like she was testing the ice before stepping on it. Jack. Hey, Mom. I turned the burner off. What's wrong? Did Sam's graduation party already happen? There it was. I set my mug down slowly. Sam, my grandson, Tom and Claire's boy, had just wrapped his first year at Reed College up in Portland. Claire had been talking for months about throwing him a massive party at their place out in Lake Oswego. Big deck, gated neighborhood. The kind of house they brought up in conversation way more than strictly necessary. I figured I'd get a call. I figured Rose would too. She's the boy's great-grandmother. She taught him how to play poker. She once chased a stray dog off his skateboard with a garden hose and didn't even drop her iced tea. She earned an invite. Yeah, I said slowly. I think it was this past Saturday. Why? Nobody called you? I called Tom, she said. To ask. He went quiet. Then Claire got on the line and laughed. Said asterisk. Oh, Mrs. Ford, the party was last Saturday. Asterisk. Just like that, I felt something cold move through my veins. Not anger, not yet. Something more like recognition. Asterisk. She laughed. Asterisk. I didn't know it right then, but that laugh was going to be the most expensive sound Claire Vance ever made. I called Tom before I was even off the phone with Rose. He picked up fast, too fast, the way guilty people always do. I didn't bother warming up. Why wasn't your grandmother at Sam's party? Silence. The specific, heavy silence of a guy running numbers in his head. Dad. It was just Sam's friends. College crowds. It wasn't really a whole family thing. She's 81 and lives 2 hours south. I know how far she lives, Tom. I've got the map. And then, I remember this like it happened in slow motion. I heard Claire's voice in the background. Not the exact words, just the tone. Low, urgent, pointed like a quarterback calling an audible at the line of scrimmage. That's when the hair on the back of my neck stood up. We'll come by, Tom said finally. Next week. We'll explain in person. Tom, next week. Dad, please. He hung up. I stood in my kitchen in Bend with cold coffee and a hot suspicion, and the dawning, ugly feeling that this had absolutely nothing to do with a barbecue. I called Rose back. They're coming next week, I told her. Tom and Claire. They want to explain in person. Asterisk, humph. Asterisk. That sound. The one that means she already knows the end of the movie, and she's just waiting to see if I'll catch up. Mom, what aren't you telling me? A pause long enough to park a Buick in. Beth Hayes was at that party. Beth? You're Beth from the First Baptist Choir? She goes to Claire's yoga studio now. The dryness in my mother's voice could strip paint. She didn't know I hadn't been invited. Called me Sunday to say what a lovely time she'd had. Mentioned meeting a very professional young woman. A lawyer. Jane, she thought, had a leather folder. The floor shifted under me. A lawyer at a sophomore's college party with a leather folder, Rose repeated, as if the folder was the detail that really brought it all home. Maybe it was. Beth said they all went inside the house for about an hour, Rose continued. Left the younger kids out on the patio. When they came back out, Tom looked like he'd been given a diagnosis. Claire looked like she'd just won the lottery. I didn't speak for a moment. Mom. My voice came out low. Careful. You know what I have to ask? Yes. Are they going after the property? The trust? Rose Ford had lived on Elm Street for 52 years. My dad had built that trust before he passed. Land? Mutual funds? The kind of quiet, unglamorous wealth that piles up when you never show off and never stop grinding. 12 acres outside Eugene. Accounts that would drop the jaws of people who assumed she was just a sweet old lady making quilts. Nobody talked about it. It was just there. Permanent. Assumed. Until someone stopped assuming and started scheming. Jack, she said. How long have you known Claire? Long enough. Then you already know the answer. She was right. I did. I'd never been able to put my finger on what bugged me about Claire Vance. She was polished, attentive, always said the right things at the perfect volume, but there was something under the hood. A quietness that wasn't peace, a watchfulness that wasn't warmth. I'd told myself I was being a paranoid father-in-law. Told myself Tom was happy, and that was all that mattered. I'd been lying to myself for years, and I had just run out of road. I'm going to make some calls, I told her. I already did, she said. And there it was, that edge in her voice. Not fear, not even outrage. Something almost like amusement. The stone-cold composure of a woman who had been underestimated her entire life and had learned to use it as a weapon. Jack, honey, she said, how do you think I knew to call you on a Thursday morning? She hung up before I could answer. I stood in my kitchen in Bend on a Thursday at 9:47 a.m., and I thought about my son, who I had raised to be a hell of a lot better than whatever this was. I thought about Claire Smooth, calculating Claire and the lawyer with the leather folder. I thought about Sam, who had zero clue his party was being used as a smokescreen. And I thought about Rose Ford, 81 years old, sitting on Elm Street, who had just hung up on me with the quiet confidence of a grandmaster, already 3 moves ahead of the entire board. I picked up my phone, pulled up a contact I hadn't dialed in 2 years, and typed 3 words. Asterisk. Call me. Urgent. Asterisk. I didn't know yet what Rose had already set in motion, but I knew this. By the time Tom and Claire showed up with their rehearsed smiles and bullet-point excuses, they were going to walk into a buzzsaw they hadn't prepped for. They thought they were coming to manage me. They had no earthly idea who they were dealing with. If you've made it this far, do me one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of folks watch without ever hitting the button, but it costs you $0 and means the world to the channel. Thank you, genuinely. 7 days. That's how long Tom and Claire let the radio silence stretch. Like they were hoping I'd cool off, lose interest, or gaslight myself into thinking I'd misread the room. 7 days of nothing but a single text from Tom that read, asterisk, still planning to come Thursday, Dad. Asterisk, with a period at the end. Not an exclamation mark, no emoji. A period. The punctuation of a guy sticking to a script. They were definitely coached. I spent that week doing what I do best. Not yelling, not spiraling, not tipping my hand. I made quiet calls. I drove the 2 hours down to Eugene on Monday, sat at Rose's oak table on Elm Street, drank her awful herbal tea, and listened. She spilled everything. And I mean times everything, asterisk. Turns out, Rose Ford had been putting in overtime while I was standing up in Bend, feeling blindsided. The morning after Beth Hayes' phone call that would be Sunday, my 81-year-old mother had gotten dressed, fired up her sedan, driven herself to downtown Eugene, and walked straight into the office of one Jane Cole, estate attorney, 4th floor of the Cascade Tower on Pine Street. You already knew Jane Cole? I stared at her across the table. She handled the Miller estate 2 years ago, Rose said, stirring her tea like we were chatting about the tomatoes in her garden. Peggy Miller spoke very highly of her. I kept her card. You kept her card. I keep everything, Jack. You know that. I did know that. The woman still had my 1,984 state championship ticket stub in a shoebox upstairs. So, you just walked in on a Sunday morning. Monday. She doesn't work Sundays. She's a professional. Rose shot me a look that suggested I might want to try acting like one too. I told her what Beth told me. She asked some questions. I answered them. Then, she made some calls of her own. What kind of calls? Rose set her spoon down with a sharp, precise times click asterisk. The kind, she said, that confirmed. Tom and Claire had retained a lawyer, a Mark Zane, Office up in Beaverton to begin the process of contesting my mental competency. The kitchen went dead quiet. Outside, a weed whacker buzzed a few houses down. A blue jay hit the bird feeder. Normal, everyday sounds in a normal, everyday neighborhood. Except nothing was normal anymore, and it hadn't been for a week. Mental competency, I said. Apparently, I'm too senile to make sound decisions about my own checkbook. She picked up her mug. I found that fascinating, given that I was the one who walked into a law firm unprompted, while my grown son was still processing his feelings up in Bend. I had no comeback for that. She wasn't wrong. Mom, I pressed both hands flat on the table. I need you to listen to me. What they're trying to pull, it's not just a slap in the face. It's illegal if they forge the premise. Jane explained it to me, very thoroughly. She nodded. She also outlined exactly what I needed to do to make sure it gets buried. Which is... Rose smiled. It was the exact same smile she used to give me when I was 16 and thought I could sneak past curfew. I never made it past the porch. Not once. We'll get to that, she said. Thursday rolled in like a storm front you've been watching on the radar for days. You know it's going to hit. You've tied down the lawn furniture, but your stomach still drops when the thunder cracks. Tom and Claire pulled into my driveway at 2:14 p.m. in Claire's white BMW. Of course, it was a BMW. I watched them through the blinds for a second before opening the door. Tom got out first. He looked completely hollowed out the way a guy looks when he's been arguing with his wife for a week straight and losing every round. Claire stepped out second, looking the exact opposite. Bright-eyed, shoulders back, wearing that perfectly engineered smile I'd spent a decade trying to read. Now I had the decoder ring. It translated to, asterisk, I want something that belongs to someone else. Asterisk, I opened the door before they even knocked. Dad! Tom stepped up and hugged me. It was a real solid hug. I'll give him that much. The kid still had a heart somewhere in there. Whatever Claire had spun him with, he hadn't frozen over completely. I held on to that thought. Come on in, I said. I brewed coffee. Claire kissed my cheek. Jack, thank you so much for being patient with us. We really felt this needed an in-person conversation. Sure thing, I said pleasantly. Patient. Right. That was the word for it. We sat at the kitchen island. The same island where Tom used to eat burnt toast before middle school. The same island that apparently meant jack squat to the people currently sitting at it armed with a litigation strategy. I poured the mugs. Nobody spoke for a solid 10 seconds. Then Tom cleared his throat. Dad, we want to talk to you about Grandma Rose. All right, I said. We're concerned about her. Concerned. She's 81, Claire chimed in, smooth as butter, like they'd practiced the baton handoff in the car. She's isolated in that big house. She's managing a very sizable portfolio without any modern oversight. And frankly, Jack, some of her recent financial choices. What choices? I asked. Claire blinked. Just a micro-expression, but I caught it. She hadn't expected the pushback so early in the first quarter. Well, she made a very substantial donation to the community center last year without consulting the family. It's her money, obviously, but she can set it on fire and use it to roast marshmallows if she wants, Claire. It's her money. Dad, nobody is saying she can't enjoy her life. We just think it's time to put some guardrails up. A structured trust to protect her. Asterisk. To protect her. Asterisk. I looked at my son, the kid I'd coached in Pop Warner, driven across the state for track meets, bailed out of debt twice without blinking, and I felt an exhausting, heavy wave of grief. Because he wasn't a monster. He was just a standard-issue guy who had married a woman with an agenda and confused it for ambition. Is that why you had an estate attorney at Sam's college party? I asked. The oxygen left the room instantly. Tom froze solid. Claire's smile didn't drop. It was too expensive for that, but it snapped tight at the corners like a cheap rubber band. Who told you that? She asked. Cold. Controlled. Does it matter? It wasn't a business thing, Tom stammered. Jane was just there as a family friend. Jane Cole, I said. 4th floor, Cascade Tower, Pine Street, Eugene. Claire set her mug down. Hard. Jane Cole, I continued, who, purely by coincidence, is the exact same attorney my mother walked in to hire on Monday morning. Silence. Absolute, Ringing silence. Claire, I said, leaning directly toward her. Do you want to tell me what was in the leather folder? Or should I tell you what Jane told my mother was in it? Every drop of blood drained from Claire's face. Jack, listen. Mark Zane, I cut her off. Up in Beaverton. That name ring any bells? Tom whipped his head to look at his wife. It was a fraction of a second, but I'd been reading that kid's tells since he was in diapers. I knew exactly what that look meant. He hadn't known about the hired gun in Beaverton. He was out of the loop. Tom, I said, dropping my voice down to a rumble. How much of this play did you actually sign off on? He didn't answer. His jaw locked up, and he stared a hole through the granite countertop. That was answer enough. Claire went on the offensive. We were looking out for the family's legacy. That is all this was. Rose is in her 80s, sitting on assets that could secure everyone's future, including Sam's. She is sitting on assets that she owns, I barked, that my dad bled for. And you hijacked my grandson's party as a staging ground for a legal ambush to declare her legally incompetent. That is sick. It's not. Stop. I held up a hand. Just shut it. Outside, the wind picked up. Ordinary Thursday weather. Here is the reality check, I said, keeping my voice dead level. Getting loud feels good for about 5 seconds, but it gives people like Claire ammunition. My mother knows. She knew before I poured my first cup of coffee. She was sitting in Jane Cole's lobby on Monday while you were still picking out your outfit for this little intervention. Jane Cole is no longer a friend of the family. She is Rose's attorney of record. I took a breath. And as of Tuesday morning, Rose overhauled her entire estate plan. Jane was courteous enough to let me know the ink is dry and notarized. Claire opened her mouth. I don't know the exact terms, I said. Rose didn't feel the need to brief me. She said, and I'm quoting her directly, asterisk, Jack, a woman's bank account is her own damn business. Asterisk. I almost smirked. Almost. What I do know is that whatever competency trap you were trying to spring, it's dead in the water. Jane made sure the new ironclad trust would take a corporate law firm a decade to untangle, and they'd still lose. The kitchen stayed quiet for a very long time. Finally, Tom spoke up. Barely a whisper. Dad, I'm sorry. I looked at my boy. I didn't tell him it was all right because it wasn't. There's one more thing, I said. Sam. Tom flinched. He doesn't know what kind of meeting happened at his own party, does he? It wasn't a question. Tom shook his head slowly. He's going to find out, I told them. Not from my mouth. But the truth always floats. And when he realizes what you did, that fallout is entirely on you. I stood up and took my mug to the sink. I think this meeting is adjourned. Claire looked like she had a PowerPoint presentation locked and loaded in her throat. She swallowed it whole. They walked out at 3:41 p.m. I watched the white BMW reverse out of the driveway and tear down the street. Then, I dialed Rose. She picked up on ring 1. Well? She asked. About how you mapped it, I said. Tom was in the dark about Mark Zane. I suspected as much. I leaned on the sink. Mom, what exactly did you lock up in those new documents? Silence. Then that sound. That maddening, undefeated Rose Ford sound. I told you, Jack. A woman's bank account is her own business. Mom, I'll see you Sunday at 4, she said. I'm making meatloaf. She hung up. I didn't know what the play was yet, but I was about to get front row seats. And my gut said Claire Vance's week was about to get exponentially worse. If you've been rocking with these stories and want to keep the lights on here, hit that like button and subscribe. The algorithm is brutal, and every click actually keeps this channel alive. Thanks for being real. Sunday meatloaf. That's the arena my mother chose to detonate a tactical nuke. Over meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and homemade lemonade at a table set for 5 in the house on Elm Street. She had ironed the good tablecloth. Asterisk. She ironed it. Asterisk. Which meant this operation had been in the works way longer than Monday morning. And every single person in that dining room was about to find out the hard way. Let me explain something about Rose Ford before we wrap this up. That woman has never raised her voice in anger a day in her life, not once. She doesn't throw plates, she doesn't scream, she doesn't issue ultimatums, she just waits. Patient, quiet, and absolutely lethal, until the crosshairs are lined up perfectly. And then, she doesn't just beat you, she dismantles you. Sunday, 4 p.m. I rolled up to Elm Street and instantly clocked two things. First, Tom's truck was in the driveway. Second, right behind it was Sam's beat-up Toyota Corolla with the Reed College sticker on the bumper. She'd invited Sam. I sat in my cab for a full minute digesting that. Rose had invited the grandson, the 20-year-old kid whose party had been hijacked to backstab his great-grandmother to Sunday dinner, without giving anyone a heads up. God, she was a sniper. I walked in the front door. Nobody knocks at Rose's house, it's practically a felony, and found Tom at the table, looking like a man awaiting the electric chair. Sam was beside him, tall and lanky, scrolling TikTok with the blissful golden retriever energy of a kid who had zero idea he was sitting on a landmine. Claire was across from them, spine like a steel rod, smile glued in place, hands folded like she was waiting for the press conference to start. Rose was at the stove, pulling a pan from the oven. "Jack," she called out without turning around. "Wash up. Food's hot." I washed up. I sat down. I locked eyes with Tom, who broke contact immediately. I looked at Claire, who met my stare with that polished defiance, the look of someone who still thought she had an ace in her sleeve. She didn't even have a sleeve left. She just didn't know it yet. "Grandma Rose," Sam said, finally ditching the phone. "Smells amazing. Thanks for having me down." "Always, honey," Rose said, dropping a massive platter on the table. "How's the semester wrapping up?" "Solid. Professor Dunn gave me an extension on my finals, so I'm coasting right now." "Good," Rose smiled. "Hard work pays dividends." The sheer weight of the irony in that sentence could have cracked the foundation, but only three of us felt it. Dinner was a masterclass in psychological warfare masquerading as a wholesome family meal. Rose served thick slices of meatloaf, buttery potatoes, and poured the lemonade into the crystal glasses. She asked Sam about his dorm life. She asked Tom about his contracting gigs. She even complimented Claire's sweater, a surgical strike that Chez Claire. Chez Claire visibly squirming, unsure if it was an olive branch or bait. It was bait. I ate and kept my mouth shut. Tom was pushing potatoes around his plate, forcing a laugh a second too late at every joke. Sam housed his food like only a college kid can, completely oblivious that the dining room was a chessboard and it was already checkmate. Then, Rose set her fork down. She dabbed her mouth with a napkin, folded it, and placed it on the table with a Times-Click asterisk. "Sam," she said brightly, "I have a graduation present for you." Sam looked up mid-chew. "Awesome." Rose reached into the pocket of her cardigan, the beige one, her Sunday best, and pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. She slid it smoothly across the oak table. "Go ahead, sweetie. Open it." I watched the kid's face as he broke the seal. I watched the laid-back college grin fade into utter shock, then profound confusion, and finally a heavy, adult realization. Tom stopped breathing. Claire went rigid. "Grandma," Sam stammered. This is a bank draft." "It is. This is an insane amount of money. Your grandfather busted his back for decades," Rose said smoothly. "And so did I. You're going to finish that degree and build something real. So yes, it's a large draft. I can't." "Mom, Dad, did you know about this?" "No," Claire snapped. The facade cracked. "Just a hairline fracture, but I heard the panic leaking through." "There is one string attached," Rose noted. Sam looked at her. "Okay. It deposits directly into an ironclad trust in your name alone. Not a family fund, not a joint account. Yours. Untouchable by any third party." She took a breath. "Jane Cole's firm set the framework up on Tuesday. It's fully executed. The check is just a visual aid. The wire is already clearing." The room went graveyard still. Watching justice get served at room temperature is a profound experience. "I should also mention," Rose continued, her tone conversational and utterly devastating, "that I've completely restructured my own estate. Jane was a miracle worker." She took a sip of lemonade. "The Elm Street property, the mutuals, the acreage, everything is locked down in an irrevocable trust. Bulletproof." Rose Claire choked out. I'm not quite done, dear, Rose said softly. I also want to add, because I believe in transparency, that I spent Tuesday afternoon with Dr. Lynn Shaw over at the Eugene Clinic. Full cognitive battery, memory, logic, reasoning. She tilted her chin up, passed with flying colors. Dr. Shaw said my brain is sharper than most 40-year-olds. Her signed affidavit is attached to the new trust filings. The dam broke. Claire's face went crimson. Rose, listen to me. Claire. Rose's voice didn't rise. It just hit the table like an anvil. I know about Mark Zane. I know about the backdoor meeting at Sam's party. I know what was in the leather folder. Dead silence. Sam turned his head slowly toward his mother. The kind of slow, deliberate turn you make when you hear glass break in a dark house. What leather folder? He asked. Nobody spoke. What meeting? His voice dropped an octave. The carefree sophomore was gone. Grandma Rose. What is she talking about? Rose looked at her great-grandson with nothing but pure, unadulterated love. Ask your parents, honey, she said softly. I think it's time you had a talk. I won't detail the next 20 minutes, because a man realizing his parents tried to scam his great-grandmother is a private kind of hell. But I'll tell you this. Sam was not as oblivious as he looked. He had noticed the strange lawyer at his party. He'd noticed his mom acting like a frantic CEO all afternoon. When Tom finally broke down and choked out the truth, Sam didn't scream. He didn't flip a chair. He just stared at Claire with a look of absolute disgust. You used my party, he said. Flat. Cold. Claire scrambled. Sam, baby. We were just trying to secure our future. You used my party. He repeated it, letting the reality of it hang in the air. Claire had zero defense. By 6:30 p.m., Tom and Claire had fled in the BMW. Sam stayed. He sat at the island with Rose, while I scrubbed the plates, my designated job since the Reagan administration. I'm so sorry they pulled that, Grandma, Sam muttered. You don't carry their luggage, Sam, Rose told him firmly. Never apologize for someone else's greed. Are you okay? Rose chuckled, patting his hand. I am 81 years old. I've survived the loss of my husband, 4 recessions, and a kitchen fire in '92. This was a speed bump. Sam let out a surprised, breathless laugh. A speed bump. A minor one. I have smart people in my corner. Jane is ruthless. And your Grandpa Jack managed not to punch anyone, which shows growth. You wanted to put Tom through a wall on Thursday, I yelled from the sink. We both know it. Sam laughed again. A real one this time. I hadn't put Tom through a wall, but my knuckles had definitely been itching. I walked out to my truck at 7:15 p.m. Sam followed me out, hands stuffed in his Reed hoodie, his breath pluming in the crisp Oregon evening. Grandpa Jack, he said. Is the money real? It's real. Jane Cole locked it in a vault with your name on it. Nobody can touch a dime. He kicked a pine cone into the grass. Is Dad gonna bounce back from this? It's gonna be a rough year, I told him. But Tom isn't evil. He's just weak. And he let someone strong convince him a bad idea was a smart move. He can fix it, if he puts the sweat in. Sam nodded. What about Mom? I looked at the kid. That, I said, is way out of my jurisdiction. He gave a dry smirk. Yeah. He glanced back at the glowing kitchen window, watching Rose's silhouette wiping down the counters. She's a force of nature, isn't she? Always has been, I said. People just keep making the mistake of forgetting. I merged onto Highway 20, heading back to Bend in the dark. The radio was low, the road was empty, and I had that deep, quiet satisfaction of watching a massive wrong get righted without a single drop of blood being spilled. It's way better than the movies. It's the pure high of watching an arrogant person step on a rake in slow motion. They thought Rose Ford was just a sweet old lady baking pies on Elm Street. They plotted, schemed, and brought in a ringer to strip her down. And she had outflanked them before they even hit the send button on the invite. She had a rock-solid estate, a killer lawyer, a clean bill of health, and a great-grandson whose life was permanently funded. All Claire had was a heavy car payment and a very awkward phone call to make to a lawyer in Beaverton on Monday morning. I almost felt pity. Almost. My phone vibrated on the passenger seat. I checked it at a stoplight. A text from Rose. Asterisk, dinner was nice. The potatoes needed more salt. Asterisk, I laughed out loud in the empty cab and typed back. Asterisk, you buried them with meatloaf and lemonade. Dad would have bought front row tickets. Asterisk. 3 typing dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Asterisk, he always loved a good show. Asterisk, I tossed the phone onto the seat and drove the rest of the way home. I thought about my old man, building a life brick by brick and leaving the keys with the only person tough enough to hold them. The vultures looked at Rose and saw a target. They saw gray hair and assumed weakness. They never actually looked closely enough to see times her asterisk. And that was the only mistake that ever mattered.